Okay, so I just want to check whether I'm audible. Can you guys hear me? Okay, so I'm just gonna share my screen. So, right, so Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay, so by the way, before we begin, I just want to share a couple of things. Three things actually. I'll stop sharing just for a second. So, by the way, I think it'll be helpful if you pin my screen. I think this will because I will be, engaging with you guys. So just to so that you guys don't get, like get a blank screen. So the first thing that I want to share with you is that this is the book, okay, Millennial Sovereign. Uh, this is like a 300-page book. You don't have to read the entire thing, I'll be honest with you. Some of the things are repetitive, so you don't have to go through it. But there will be like specific sections from specific chapters that I'll share, and I think you definitely have to read it because you'll find it really enjoyable. Or maybe I'll just tell you to read the entire chapter. Okay, so I think you should read the introduction, read the last conclusion, number 7, and then read the chapter on Shah Ismail and Babur, right? 16th century Iran. I think it's number 3. If you read that, I think you'll be done. Okay, so read number 1, introduction, the last one, the conclusion, and then read number 3. Okay, also read number 2. So 1, 2, 3, and 7. You read that, I think you're fine. Okay. The chapter as far as the chapter on Jahangir is concerned, you just have to go through the paintings, right? And then I think you'll be fine. Okay. That's one. Number 2, um, yeah. So regarding the discussion session thing, um, I'm okay with any day, right? At any time, any UK time. It's just that on Wednesday and Thursday, I am working on something else, so I cannot stay late at night. But other than that, I'm totally fine with whatever. So what I'll do, I will send a poll in the Telegram and the WhatsApp, and whatever the day that you guys choose, I think that will be the day that we'll have a discussion session. And that's related to the third point that I wanted to mention, that I'm super interested in disagreements, in critiques, right? I have no issue with that. I'm actually looking forward to critiques on this lecture, on this book as well. I have my own critiques of this book. I've actually talked to scholars who have critiqued this book as well. So I'm really looking forward to your critiques and your disagreements, or just like your opinion in general about the book, the content, the ideas that we'll explore. It's not possible to explain the entire book in like 1 hour or 40, 50 minute session, but I will try my best to give you, a good overview, a good grasp of the book in a way that you can, share those ideas with others. So yeah, so the name of the book is The Millennial Sovereign. The Millennial Sovereign, Sacred and Kingship in Islam, right? So with that, I'll start. Right, Bismillah. Rabbi shrah li sadri. Just give me a second. Okay, so the first thing that I want to just briefly mention is that so if you look at the title, I have used the words Mughal India and Safavid Iran, right? And if I don't know if you're in the Telegram group, but there's one person who did leave a comment under the Islamic knowledge channel about these categories. Why did you use India? Why not Hindustan or subcontinent, basically? So uh, again, we don't have to get into the details of it. When I say Mughal India, I'm basically talking about this. Okay, you see this light area? This is basically Mughal Empire, and you can see it includes Kabul. It includes southern Afghanistan, the tribal Pashtun areas in Pakistan, and the entirety of Pakistan, right? So, and it doesn't even include entirely what is today considered political state of India, right? So when I say Mughal India, I basically refer to this. Okay. And when I say Safavid Iran, I'm referring to this. And as you can see, the boundaries of Safavid Iran is reaching Syria here, right? So they have Baghdad, Iraq, today modern day Iran, and some Turkish states also, right? So we don't have to worry about these, nitty-gritty details. I think it's not that hard. So Mughal India, I just showed you the map, and then also Safavid Iran. Another point, this is just a historical analysis, right? We're not. So if you read the book, you will find some ideas that the book will argue that these ideas were very prevalent in the past, right? So this book or this lecture is just about, historical analysis. We're just like reading and understanding what the book argues and what the past was. We're not, verifying or condemning any person or any, uh, entity. And like I said, we can have disagreements and critiques on this as well. Okay. So before I share the contents, I just want to give a short, like brief introduction of what happened before this book. So when the Mongols invaded Asia, um, what happened was that Islam as a cultural force in Muslim Asia or in Asia, it kind of eclipsed for many decades. Okay, and in place of Islam, we see a rise in pre-Islamic Zoroastrian influence. We see the rise in Christian influence. We see the rise in, Chingizid or sorry, Mongolic tribal customs that are basically becoming prevalent. And after the devastation of Baghdad in 1258, and another thing that happens is that Arabic as a language of court, that basically, so Arabic as a language of bureaucracy and court and politics, that basically dies out, right? So if you go back to the Umayyad era, the Abbasid era, you'll see Arabic as the language of governance. But after that destruction, we see a rise in Persian. Okay. And so this is something that Dr. Richard Eaton calls the Persianate age, right? Where Persian is the language that basically, it's everywhere in Asia and India and other places, right? So that happens. What is relevant to our discussion here is that an important thing happens in this post-Mongol era, right? And that is the rise and dominance of Sufi saints and Sufi orders. And what that means is that it's not that Sufiya did not exist before the Mongol invasion. Mongol invasion. What it means is that we see a rise in Sufi orders everywhere, and they're basically taking over the public domain, right? And by the public domain, I mean politics, imperial politics, the public, the Sufiya are now more actively engaged in shaping people's beliefs, customs, and at the same time, they are now playing a significant role in politics. In so Sufiya in this post-Mongol era, as the book argues, they effectively becomes kingmakers and power brokers. And this important role of Sufiya actually goes all the way till the 19th century, 18th century, right? So we see this with the fact, for example, Babur made alliance with Sufiya, Humayun did the same. And even if you go back to the mid 18th century, we see, for example, Ahmad Shah Abdali, the Afghan king, who basically did not make alliance. He did not make alliance, but the Sufi saint, bestowed power and authority over Ahmad Shah Abdali, and then he became king after that. Okay. So the 16th century is also important because this is the century where we see a rise in messianic figures or figures who are claiming themselves to be Mahdis, right? And we'll explain that. So this is like a short introduction, right? Short, brief overview of what happened before. Again, so this is the Mongol Empire. You can see that to like the 14th century. It's other than India and Egypt, it basically takes over everything. Okay. Okay, so these are the main points that we'll go through. And in the end, there's a conclusion as well. So first, I just want to, emphasize on the point that Mughal India and Safavid Iran, again, look at the maps, right? This is what I mean. Mughal India, Safavid Iran, they have a lot of things in common, a lot of them, right? And so we'll explain that. Um, the next thing that we'll talk about is sacred symbols of power and authority. Why have I used the word sacred here? Why not just symbols of power and authority? And I'll give my reason. And then the concept of Lord of Conjunction, right? So this is the concept that binds the book together. Okay, and we'll go through that. I'll explain it, and then it'll be easier for you to read the book. And the last, we'll also talk about how kingship and sainthood was materialized in the kings that we'll go through, Timur and others. And then in the end, there's a conclusion. Okay, so Safavid Iran and Mughal India have a lot of things in common. first of all, Persian, right, as a lingua franca. This is the language of the court, of poetry, of governance, right, of bureaucracy. And another shared aspect is the fact that pre-Islamic Persian themes and cultural and political influence is appropriated and naturalized. And I'll explain that in detail what that means. How were pre-Islamic Persian ideas, themes naturalized by the Mughals and the Safavids? So I'll give examples of that. Um, and I guess that's it. So they also competed for sovereignty. Babur was basically turned into a disciple by Shah Ismail. So Babur is the founder of Mughal Empire. Okay, Babur is the founder of Mughal Empire, Zahiruddin Babur. And then Shah Ismail is, like, you can say, the founder, the central figure, the founder of the Safavid Iran. Okay, and what happened was that Babur found himself becoming a disciple of Shah Ismail, because Shah Ismail was a king, and he also claimed to be a mystic, a divine figure, right? And which is the main theme of this book and this lecture, that in this post-Mongolic era, we see kings who are also acting as saints, right? So we'll explain that in detail as well. So this is, again, just a general introduction about the Mughals and the Safavids. So Ismail is the founder, and then his son Tahmasp. The interesting thing about this is that, so Babur became a disciple of Ismail to his detriment. And then later, Humayun found himself in a difficult situation, and then he had to accept the discipleship of Shah Tahmasp. Okay. And that was a huge scandal for the Mughals, because accepting the discipleship of the Safavids, they basically undermined their sovereignty, like their, unique, claim of sovereignty. Okay. Uh, okay. So let me just explain that. Um, an interesting thing that we see in this post-Mongolic era in Mughal India and Safavid Iran, anyone starting from Temur, is that noble lineage has always been, a legitimizer of sovereignty and authority. But in this age, in this post-Mongolic era, so starting from Timur and onwards, which is like the 14th, 15th century, um, the noble lineage becomes specified. Like, so Chinggis, or the being a descendant of Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, and later on the being a descendant of Temur becomes, really important. So if you're a descendant, so by the time of Temur, if you're a descendant of Chinggis, that's a sacred symbol. That's like a symbol that gives you authority, right? Because being a descendant of Chinggis, it means that you are special. You're not just a common person, right? Divine birth is also very common in this era. I mean, divine birth is used by these kings that we will talk about, like Temur, Shah Ismail, even Akbar, right? They talk about divine births of their ancestors or themselves. So that's another symbol that they use in order to, uh, legitimize their power. Dreams and visions also important. Basically, if you look at Babur, whenever he would have a dream, he would ask the astrologers and ask for opinions. Like, okay, I had this dream and I saw three men by the name of Ibrahim die in a battle. What does that mean? And then the astrologers would, give different interpretations and all that. Muslim astrologers, Hindu astrologers, and all that. Okay. Sufi legitimation is also important. Like I said, Babur, Humayun, and all major kings, they all sought legitimacy from Sufi saints. And also, one thing that I want to mention here is that the Naqshbandi Sufiya are really important. They play a significant role in Central Asia, in particular, like as far as the political game was concerned. Like in the political realm, the Naqshbandi Sufiya in Central Asia played a significant role. So there were some, mystical orders. Some of them very heretical from the traditional perspective, but like they would, for example, be naked and they would dance in public, and so they were basically lunatics. But then there were also Sufi orders who were very dominant, and they played a huge role. Okay, and so the point that we have to remember here is that in this post-Mongolic era, Sufiya and Ulama, they are uh, basically kingmakers and power brokers. So one time Babur wanted to take Bukhara, I think, and he could not have taken it without the help of this Sufi saint. So there's so many examples of that, all the way down to the 18th century. Okay, so pre-Islamic Persian cultural and political themes. I'll explain that. So, which were the so who claimed the noble lineage of Chinggis? Timur claimed it, and we'll see, and I'll explain how in detail. Mughals also claim it through Timur. So Mughals claim to be descendants of Timur, right? So this guy is Timur, okay? And these are the Mughal kings. This is Babur, Zahiruddin Babur the first. This is Humayun, and this is Akbar. Okay, first king, second king, third. This is Timur. Okay, he claims to be the descendant of Chinggis, right? Chinggis Khan, right? The guy who conquered Asia. Actually, his grandson did it, but anyway. Um, so that as far as the noble lineage of Ali is concerned, like who claimed the lineage of Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu? All three of them. And as far as the Timur lineage is concerned, Mughals did claim it, obviously, but the Safavids, I wouldn't say they claimed the lineage. Like Shah Ismail did not claim to be, a descendant of Timur. What he did was that he embraced the sophisticated Timurid Persianate culture, right? And we'll see many examples of that. The Shahnama Ismail, I think that's the name of it, Shahnama Ismail, which is basically, very similar to the older Shahnama, right? I don't know if you know about Shahnama, but basically Ismail also commissions his own Shahnama by his name, where there are like epic mystical tales of him killing monsters and all that, right? So he writes that, and all of that is basically a product of this highly sophisticated Persianate culture, created by the descendants of Timur. So Shah Ismail accepts, he embraces this sophisticated Persian Timurid culture, right? Divine birth, again, these three are the figures who claim divine birth. Astrology is very important. By the 16th century, we see that astrology has become a global science. Like Europeans, Muslims, Hindus, everyone is doing it. The knowledge is also like you can also share the knowledge across different, regional spaces, right? So people from different religions are engaged in this science. So it's a universal science. Um, Muslims also paid great amount of, detail, like attention to it. That's also important. Numerology basically means that the pattern of the letters in your name has significance, right? And we'll see this in the example of Shah Jahan and Akbar as well. Like they basically believe that the pattern of letters in their names have significance, cosmic significance, and all that. And these things were serious, by the way. Like these were not just some, ideas flowing around. People actually took that very seriously. There was a serious science behind it. Like undergirding astrology was highly advanced astronomy and mathematics that was involved, right? So these ulum ghariba, again to quote Dr. Asad Ahmed, these ulum ghariba, they are not like independent sciences. They are basically couched within a broader philosophical activity that is taking place in the Muslim world. So Muslims are engaged in mathematics, they're engaged in trigonometry, astronomy, right, and all that. These are good sciences. These are all, solid sciences. But then astrology is just, couched on top of that, right? So it's basically informed by it. It's an informed science. So, like I said, I just gave you the example of, numerological significance of the name of Shah Jahan. So Shah Jahan's basically his courtiers, right, all the astrologers in his court, they tell him that your name and the name of Timur has some cosmic significance because of the hidden properties of the letters and the patterns of your name. Right. So Timur claimed, and we'll see, Timur claimed to be Lord of Conjunction, and we'll see what that means. Whereas Shah Jahan claimed to be the second Lord of Conjunction. Okay. Okay. So noble lineage, divine birth, astrology, pre-Islamic Persian cultural themes, right? These are sacred symbols of power and authority. Now, why am I using the word sacred symbols, right? Just to give you an example, an example of a symbol which is not sacred, but nonetheless it gives you power and authority is elections, right? So when there are elections, the rules of the game is somebody will participate in election And if that person gets the most votes, that person will become the president, and that person will have effective authority, right? I mean, the authority is granted to him by the votes, by the numbers that we see, right? So that's a symbol of authority, like having more votes. That's a symbol of authority, and that grants you authority, right? But it's not sacred. Like there's nothing supernatural, divine, or cosmic force playing around here. It's just, the rules of the game are simple. You cast a vote, and the guy who gets the most vote is basically he gets to be, wield authority. But the reason I've used sacred symbols here is that in all of these elements that I've mentioned here, noble lineage, divine birth, dreams and visions, Sufi legitimation, astrology, numerology, pre-Islamic Persian influences, all of these elements have a sacred aura lurking behind it. So with noble lineage, we will see that the whole story of Chingizid lineage was articulated in a very sacred manner, like divine births. All of these things are, done in a very sacred way. Um, Likewise, astrology, right? It has sacred, meanings, deep meanings. Cosmic forces are playing, right? Um, so that's why I've used the word sacred symbols, right? So if I am a descendant of Timur or Chingiz or Alid, of the descendant of Ali radiallahu anhu. So that means that I have, authority. I have basically a claim to authority, legitimate claim. But if I don't have that and I still have an army, then I'm just like Shaybani Khan. Shaybani Khan was an Uzbek ruler. He conquered many cities. He defeated Babur, but he was not considered to be a guy of noble lineage. He was not considered to be a guy who can rule. Why? Because he lacked noble lineage, divine birth, or astrological significance of his birth, right? He lacked all of those things. So, yeah, okay. So, in particular, what I mean is when I say that pre-Islamic Persian influence was very prevalent in this post-Mongol era. So there's this famous, idiom that king and prophet are twins in pre-Islamic Persian world. Okay. So the king and the prophet are basically considered to be twins. The king is the ruler of this physical temporal world, whereas the prophet is on, on a higher plane. He's like a divine figure who knows the reality and all that. And it's very similar to the way that Muslim kings in the 15th and 16th century are claiming themselves to be. They're basically combining the properties of the prophet and the king as imagined and understood in the pre-Islamic Persian Empire. They're basically combining the properties or skills of these two king and prophets in themselves, right? So Temur or Akbar or these guys, they're not just claiming to be rulers of this temporal world, they're also claiming to be divine figures. Okay, so they're basically combining these two things. Uh, and I'll explain this in detail later on. There's a case study of Shah Ismail, of Akbar and Temur coming up, but they basically appropriated Persian symbols as well, like Jahangir and his paintings. We'll see example of that. Shah Ismail naturalizing himself in the pre-Islamic Persian mythology, right, where he's killing monsters, right? So we'll see all of that. Even Hamza radiallahu anhu and Ali radiallahu anhu, they were also basically presented as divine legendary figures in ancient Persian mythologies. They are killing Ajdaha. Ajdaha is like this monster in Shahnama in this pre-Islamic Persian era. Uh, and so these personalities, they are in that stories basically. There are even paintings uh, which are presented as pre-Islamic. There are paintings where we see that the Ahl Bayt, Nabi Sallam, Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, are presented as divine figures, but they are like the context, the background is pre-Islamic Persia. Okay. Okay, let's just get to the details now. So what is Lord of Conjunction? By the way, I'm not reading the comments right now. I just want to finish it and then we'll go back to the discussion. Okay. So Lord of Conjunction, what is it? Basically, there was this prevalent idea, just to summarize it, you can read it later on. There was this prevalent idea, which was everywhere, like it was universal. The idea was that the two superior planets, Saturn and Jupiter, they align after a certain time, right? So after every 20 years, 240 years, and then 960 years. These are the three, points, right? Temporal points where Saturn and Jupiter align. Okay, there's a conjunction of these two planets. Okay, the conjunction that happens every 20 years is called small, right? It's basically a small conjunction. It doesn't mean that much. It's just fine. The conjunction that happens after every 240 years, that's called medium conjunction. And the 960 years conjunction is called the great conjunction. And it's the conjunction, meaning the alignment of Saturn and Jupiter, that happens at the 960th year, is when the Lord of Conjunction will appear. And the Lord of Conjunction is basically a guy who's a person, a personality who's either a Messiah, a Mahdi, a great king, who's going to radically change the world. Maybe even, he's going to lead to the end of the world. Uh, that person will appear after, that Lord of Conjunction, that person will appear at the 960th mark, basically when the great conjunction will happen. Okay, so this is basically, that's the idea, right? So we're seeing, alignments of planets at a certain point in time and the meaning behind it. Okay, so 960th year, Saturn Jupiter align, and the idea is that there will be like a king who will basically change the fate of the world. Right? This is Lord of Conjunction. And Timur claimed himself to be, oh, so he did not personally claim to be Lord of Conjunction, but his descendants, I mean, later kings like Shah Rukh, for example, he called his father Lord of Conjunction, Sahib-e-Kiran. Okay. Akbar claimed to be Lord of Conjunction. Humayun claimed to be Lord of Conjunction. Shah Ismail claimed to be Lord of Conjunction. Akbar claimed to be Lord of Conjunction. Shah Jahan claimed to be the second Lord of Conjunction, Sahib Kiran Sani. Okay. And now you know what that means. What does it mean when Temur, or let's say his descendants, are calling his father Lord of Conjunction? It's this basically, that his Temur is that promised Messiah or that great ruler who is going to change the fate of the world, right? And they basically did that as well. So it was almost like, I mean, another way of looking at it is like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Temur is conquering vast swaths of land, right? And he's like murdering people like in tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and he's erecting statues, monuments of skulls, just to, basically it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Look, that great king who's going to change the reality has arrived, and look how he's, ravaging the entire world. And another reason why he killed that, theatrically, is because he wanted to uh, legitimize his claim as the descendant of Chinggis, because Chinggis and his descendants were known for that blood, that violence, that, destruction. So he wanted to enact that to show that, no, look, I'm actually the descendant. Look at what I'm doing. I'm conquering everything just like that forefather did. And I'm doing exactly, in fact, I'm actually surpassing him. This was also his motive. He wanted to surpass him in that. So this last thing. This is basically what Ibn Khaldun talks about Lord of Conjunction thing. By the way, Ibn Khaldun and Timur had a meeting as well in 1401. When Timur reached Damascus in 1401, the Mamluk army retreated, and then Ibn Khaldun was called by Timur for a discussion. And in that discussion, um, basically Ibn Khaldun was a very clever guy. He was already in Iran, and he already understood who Timur was, what was his background, and all that. So the merchants in Iran told him that, yeah, there's this guy, he's claiming to be the descendant of Chinggis and, Khalid and all that. He's claiming to be basically that promised Lord of Conjunction. By the way, everyone was waiting for that Lord of Conjunction to appear. Everyone, like in Hindus were talking about this, Muslim, the Jews, every astrologer on the face of the earth was talking about it. Okay. So Ibn Khaldun goes back to Dimashq and then he sees that the army has arrived. And then when Timur calls Ibn Khaldun starts flattering Timur. He calls him that, wait, you're the guy, you're the one that was promised. And I talked to the scholars of Spain and the Jews, the Jewish astrologers in North Africa, and they are telling me that a king in the east is appearing, and I think it is you. And so Timur is really flattered by it. Um, uh, so I think that he really played him. So Ibn Khaldun was really clever in that. Okay, now let's just go through some of the examples. And every single thing that I mentioned above, right, as far as the sacred symbols are concerned, you will see all of these things playing out actually. Okay, so if you don't understand anything that I said before, don't worry, I'll explain this in like concrete examples. So kingship and sainthood materialized. By kingship, I mean kings. Sainthood means this claim of being a divine figure. Okay, materialized, meaning that now it's in full play. It's happening. So how kingship and sainthood were fused and materialized in the bodies of the kings mentioned below, Temur, Shah Ismail, Akbar, and other Mughals, and how these kings imagined and presented themselves as sacred kings. So the sacred king is now the fusion of kingship and sainthood. That is king with divine powers. Okay, so let's start with Timur. Again, he claims noble lineage. So early on, he only claims lineage of Chinggis. Okay, and later on, he also claims the lineage of Hazar Ali. Um, Divine birth is also here as well. I'll just go give you this example. So the descendants of Timur, Shah Rukh, his son, who became a king later on, they basically rewrote history and they basically, just to legitimize their authority, they commissioned books about the history of Timur and his ancestors. And what they did in the book is that they presented Timur and Chinggis as descendants of a common ancestor. Okay, so that's important. Common ancestor, okay, ancestor. The name of the ancestor is this Buzunchar. Hope I'm not butchering the name, but that's that. Okay, and he's the son of the princess Al-Hua, right? And the interesting thing about this, again, just to add that sacred divine element into this lineage, right? So already, again, Timur is already sharing a common ancestor with Genghis, right? This Buzunchar is now an ancestor of Genghis, but he's also an ancestor of Timur, as claimed in the book. But that's not it. That's not it. The birth of this person is miraculous, right? It's a miraculous birth of Timur and Genghis Khan's common ancestor. How? Well, it's basically the story of the birth of Isa alayhi salam. Okay, so just as Isa alayhi salam was miraculously born without a father and all that, right? The exact same story is rewritten here with Quranic verses and all of that, just to legitimize it. And so the story goes that this princess, there was a light that presented itself to her, and then that light gave a gift to the princess in the form of this sun. Okay, so it's very similar to basically it's a spin-off of the story of the birth of Isa alayhi salam. Okay, so you can read that. She conceived her son, not son, through a light which came into her from the upper part of the door, and it assumed for her the likeness of a perfect man. And the light said that it was one of the sons of the commander of the faithful, Ali radiallahu anhu. So the sun was, I mean, the light which gave the sun was basically Hazrat Ali, right? He was that divine light. So you see what happens here. Timur has claimed lineage of both Ali radiallahu anhu and Genghis in this rewritten story. Okay. An important point that we have to remember is that this claim, again, for us, it may seem fantastical, absurd, and heretical to us, but it is important to know that it did not come from the minds of illiterate soldiers or shamanistic Mongols. The use of Arabic rather than Persian, Turkish, or Mongolian, the spoken languages of the masses, and the cryptic references to the Quran not only enhance the mystique of the message but also indicate that the producers and primary consumers of the inscriptions were those trained in the Islamic religious sciences. So this was a religious claim, it was for the ulama. Uh, okay, so Timur, noble lineage, divine birth, okay? Again, acha, discipleship, by the way, he had disciples, murid, properly. His murids were basically his soldiers, and his soldiers would basically pray to him. Uh, and that is common with Shah Ismail as well, and Akbar as well. And he also, his descendants called him Lord of Conjunction as well. So we have come full circle. We see the exact same thing with Shah Ismail. Again, noble lineage, he claimed to be Sayyid, right? But he goes one step further. He calls himself a basically Ali radiallahu anhu reborn, okay? And not just Ali Radhanhu reborn, but also he claimed to be a reincarnation of pre-Islamic Persian figures, heroic figures. Okay, like Sam, Bahram. He also names his son, by the way, not so his sons do not have Arabic names or Islamic names. His sons have pre-Islamic Persian names, right? Like Tahmasp and others, Rustam. Okay, and that's another example of the prevalence of, pre-Islamic Persian ideas and themes. Okay, yeah. Discipleship, again, he had a disciples known as Kizilbash, the red-haired or red-headed. Uh, and so they believed in him. They also used to pray him. I mean, this European observer is saying that this monarch, Shah Ismail, who was very close to him, he's basically worshipped. And his soldiers, the Kizilbash, his devotees, they enter the battle without any shield, without any defense, and they just like die for him. Lord of Conjunction, he claimed to be Lord of Conjunction too. Again, the promised king who was going to radically change, radically alter the world, or a Mahdi, or a Messiah, or the end of the world. Like Lord of Conjunction meant all of those things at the 960th year. Naturalization of pre-Islamic Persian, I just give you the example of that. Okay. Yeah, so again, this is a good example. He makes a drinking cup out of Isfandiar's skull. This is so where is this happening? This is happening in Shahnama Ismail, the book that he wrote, which is very similar or inspired by the original Shahnama written in pre-Islamic Persia. So in that book, Shah Ismail, he makes a drinking cup out of Isfandiar's skull. This is from Shahnama, the pre-Islamic Persian figure. He uses the ring in Rustam's ear as his lasso, and he scalps Jamshed and uses the skin to fashion a war drum out of the latter's famous scalp. All of these things are mentioned in Shahnama Ismail. And it also has Sufi and Shi influences in that Shahnama Ismail, right? So his sword is that of, Ali radiallahu anhu, Zulfikar, and there are other examples of that. Yeah, like I said, there were even paintings that were commissioned by the Safavid Iran in the 15th century, which depicted Nabi Sallam, Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, and his sons Hassan and Hussein radiallahu anhu. Okay, so Taj Hedri was basically a symbol. It was a headwear of which symbolizes the Safavid Iran. That's just another example of uh, you know, the Qizilbash seeing Safavid King Shah Ismail as the, an heir of Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, but also a reborn. It's like that same energy. Okay, so the Mughals are really interesting. So we'll talk about the flag, and then so this focuses so I'm focusing specifically on Akbar, but then I'm also explaining certain points from other Mughal emperors. So Akbar is at the center, and then the other Mughal kings are at the periphery in this discussion. Okay, and the reason is because Akbar achieved what other Mughal emperors desperately wanted, or the other later emperors basically derived their authority from him. So Humayun could not achieve, the amount of aura or power, authority, and sacred symbols the way that Akbar achieved it. Okay. Um, and later kings basically they just copied him. Okay, so Akbar is like central. Another reason is that Babur, like I said, Babur and Humayun were humiliated because they had to accept the discipleship of Shah Ismail and Shah Tahmasp respectively, right? So Babur became the disciple of Shah Ismail, which was very humiliating, um, because you're undermining your own sovereignty, you're undermining your own unique and divine basically position status. And likewise, Humayun, when he was uh, defeated and pushed out of India by Sher Shah Suri, so Humayun had to accept uh, being a refugee and the discipleship of Shah Tahmasp, the second king of Safavid Iran. Okay. We'll also go through some of the hierarchies that Humayun created, and we'll see what that reveals. Because again, Akbar, Humayun, Shah Jahan, Jahangir, all of them claim to be Lord of Conjunction, right? Divine figures so they were not just like rulers of this physical world again, but they were like they were also divine figures, right? Who can enact, miracles. So this is the Mughal flag. Again, just to emphasize the point of pre-Islamic Persian influences, this sun and the line, right? Sher Khurshid, this is a line that goes back to the time of the Sassanids. The sun is also a pre-Islamic Persian symbol. It symbolizes, radiance and justice and, greatness. The line is bravery, courage, and all that. Okay, so this is there are other flags as well, whether there's like a Ajdaha, right? And there are other symbols as well in Mughal Empire, but this is like typical. Okay, so I talked about the divine birth of the common ancestor of Timur and Genghis. Well, Akbar legitimizes it. He actually emphasized this. He said, yes, it did happen. That Alankua, like that princess who had a son, right? Who was and that son was the ancestor, like the miraculous ancestor of Genghis and Timur. All of that actually happened. And basically, Akbar is like a manifestation. He's like a divine manifestation of that. So you can see here. You can read the quote. Okay, so if we move forward to Jahangir, this is Jahangir. So Jahangir was really creative with painting. So I gave you the example of Shah Ismail writing Shahnama Ismail, right? So he is writing a chronicle, yeah, or legendary mythical story, which is highly inspired from the original Shahnama, right? What Shah Jahan is doing here is that he is, incorporating pre-Islamic Persian influences, and he's expressing that in painting, right? Paintings. And these paintings are different from the Persian miniatures previously, right? They're very different than that. There's a heavy focus on elements that Shah Jahan wants to express. So sunburst that you're seeing goes all the way back to pre-Islamic Persian influence. Had this halo, the sun, the sunburst, right? So this is a Sufi saint, right? And this is most likely the Ottoman Empire. Sorry, the Ottoman Sultan. Okay, and then we followed by a European, right? And then the last one, I think, is the painter. So what this means is that if you look at the comments, uh, you know, written below, what this means is that look, Jahangir is not only the king of Surat, meaning the physical appearance, he is also the king or an authority of inner matters, right? Inner matters, like spiritual matters, right? So, and what that means is that uh, because he's the ruler of both, uh, Jahangir prioritizes the inner reality, basically mystical dimension of that. So that's why he is, prioritizing the Sufi saint, the dervish, over the temporal king here. So that's his, way of expressing his, divinity and like sacred kingship. Again, sunburst, really important. By the way, this is just like a zoomed in version of a painting. The painting, if you look at like in its entirety, is Jahangir with the sunburst, and he's holding a globe. Okay, and that globe was basically, I think it was designed in Lahore or something. but it's very interesting. So there's also this trope of holding a globe. So Jahangir is a painting where he's holding a globe, and then there's a painting of I think of this saint that I forgot. I think his name is Moinuddin, Sheikh Moinuddin, I think. And he's also holding a globe. So these kind of things were very common. Uh, okay, holding a globe and all that. So if you look at Humayun, again, Humayun also claimed to be Lord of Conjunction. He claimed to be not just like a king, but also a divine figure, right? Which is the running theme in all of that. So you can see he has basically divided uh, the social groups into these divisions. Um, and you can see Humayun as God's Caliph and Lord of Conjunction. This is basically a book that was written under the supervision of Humayun. He wrote a book where this table was created. Okay, so it's from a book written in Humayun's era. So the noble ministers comes first, then the Sufiya and the Sayyids. Okay, so men of knowledge, ulama, and then the judges, then the poets, then the farmers, and all that. So we see this hierarchy. You can see the influence of astrology here, right? Um, he's basically he has divided days of the week uh, on the basis of the positioning of the stars, sorry, the planets and all that. Um, you can read this later on. But all of this is from the book. Um, so he would also wear certain dresses on a certain day, like Saturday, black, Saturn, right? That's the planet. Sunday, sun, yellow. Monday, moon, white or green. Tuesday, Mars, red, right? So you can see, like, this is not just for fun. He's not doing this for fun. He actually believes that there are like cosmic forces out there who influence. And if I don't follow this ritual, this well thought of ritual, then I mean, what's the point? I mean, so these things. I mean, we may laugh at them. We may think that this is just like weird, but these ideas they were everywhere. I'm pretty sure that if anyone tells Humayun that, or Akbar that people choose kings or presidents when they vote or something, I'm pretty sure that he will find that a bit weird. It was like, well, but what about the cosmic significance of falana day and the time that that is happening? Like, don't you think that even if you want to do the election, it should happen on falana day at falana time of the year, or with falana people? Like, so I'm pretty sure that he will have a lot of questions and uh, disagreements. So the conclusion is, and we'll go back again just to have a review of that, but the basic conclusion is that the ulama in Sufis, they're playing a central role now in this post-Mongolic era, and they're playing roles as kingmakers and power brokers in Mughal India and Safavid Iran. And their Sufi mystical aura is so important that even kings are basically competing with them, right? Kings are competing with the Sufia to present themselves as, you know, mystical figures. That's also an important point of this. Okay. Another important point that we have that I just want to mention, I didn't get into detail, but it's important that in that era, the primary teachers of the masses were Sufia. Like in the post-Mongolic era, Sufi orders dominate every single domain of life. Okay. From taking care of the poor in soup kitchens or dealing with kings, and they basically go everywhere. Okay. And the Sufiya become the primary teachers of the masses. And I don't want to create this dichotomy of ulama and Sufiya. I mean, they're ulama or Sufiya, but I'm just focusing on the Sufiya here. Um, the masses' knowledge of Islam was not text-based, but person mystic-based. Obviously, there was no availability of print or paper and all that. Those technologies were not available. So person-based, like people will go to a scholar or the Sufi, the local Sufi. So imagine a village in India somewhere in the 16th century, and people call themselves Muslim. They have Muslim names. Well, what sources of knowledge do they have to learn about their religion? Well, they take all their knowledge from that local Sufi who's over there, and that Sufi might be part of a broader Sufi network. So he might have traveled to um, Bukhara, Kabul, and all that, and then at the end of that, he would have settled in that little village, and he would be educating the people in terms of religion and Aqaid and all that. So today's symbols and rituals that legitimize sovereignty are election votes, But in the Mughal India and Safavid Iran, those symbols were noble lineage, divine birth, reincarnation, astrological predictions, numerological patterning names, time of birth, dreams and visions, and Sufi legitimation. So time of birth, so it was important to be born at the right time, actually. So when Akbar was born, and the astrologers told Babur that he was born on a really significant time, and his name that is Akbar, so that name also means Farana something something. Babur really got happy. He stood up, he started dancing and running around and all that. So time of birth, astrological predictions, those things were really important, and they were sacred symbols that could bestow authority and sovereignty on you. Okay, so that's it. I mean, this was the again. There's so many things that we can discuss in the book, but that was basically it. Mongols destroy Asia. Then there's a sociological change in the form of rise and dominance of Sufi saints and Sufi orders, who basically take over every realm, every possible realm. Um, and then the Sufi, the Mughal India and Safavid Iran, they have a shared worldview. They shared a lot of themes. They both are influenced from pre-Islamic Persian ideas, cultural themes, political structures, right? And they also have a very troubled relationship. Like I said, Humayun had to become a disciple of Shah Ismail to his detriment. Um, yeah, so these are the sacred symbols that are important, that basically bestow authority on you: noble lineage, divine birth, astrology, numerology, and so these were the figures who claimed lineage of particular entity. Okay. Um, yeah. So I gave three examples of it. Timur, again, all of the things that I mentioned here basically play out when I give specific examples. So Timur, again, noble lineage, divine birth. Shah Ismail, noble lineage, divine birth, and both of them claim to be Lord of Conjunction. Akbar, exactly the same. Um, all three of them had disciples. Akbar had a Deen Ilahi. I'm sure everybody knows, like Deen Ilahi. He claimed to be Mujaddid al-Afsani as well. Explicitly claimed to be Mujaddid al-Afsani. So he commissioned a book called a chronicle called Akbar Nama. In Akbarnama, he explicitly claimed to be Mujaddid al-Afsani, the reviver of the second millennium. Okay, Lord of Conjunction, basically. Okay, his astrologers told him that 5/15/82 of the Gregorian calendar is basically the year where that conjunction is happening, and that is happening under your reign. So Baba really got happy, and then he claimed to be. There was a great celebration. In fact, then Akbarnama was written, and then he was proclaimed as Mujaddid al-Afsani and all that. So, and Deen Ilahi, he had disciples, right? Jahangir had disciples. He also claimed to be Lord of Conjunction, that promised figure who's going to change reality. Even Sir Thomas Roe, Sir Thomas Roe became his disciple, his murid. So all of these kings in this post-Mongolic era, they're all, presenting themselves not just as kings of this world, but also divine figures. They're claiming to be lords of conjunction. They also have discipleship, right? Um, they're all claiming noble lineage, divine birth, right? And I give examples of that. And another important point that we should not forget is that the ulama are playing a central role here now, and all of these kings are engaging with the ulama. They're basically asking and requiring legitimacy from them. So the Babur, he had to deal with a lot of Sufia. He had to, attain their legitimacy. Humayun had to do it. Akbar, he got into a little conflict as well when he was criticized by the Sufia, like Badawi ulama. But then, so interesting point that I want to share is that when the ulama criticized Akbar for his basically copying Shah Ismail, number one. Number two, his claims were really hard to accept. So then Shah Ismail called his courtiers, like people of sitting in the court. He told them to write a response, and the response was that, look, Akbar basically said that how can I be against Islam when I don't even ask the Sayyids to prostrate before me? Because in his court, if you enter his court, you would have to basically bow down and prostrate. So that was also common. So yeah, I mean, I explained the influences of pre-Islamic Persia, the hierarchy, astrology, and all these things. So this was the conclusion. I'll stop it here. There are a few more things that I want to share, but I think that's enough. Um, so we can have a Q&A if any questions that you have. Okay. I think that okay. I'm reading the chat right now. So yeah, you're okay. So what is the book? Okay. Bro is ahead of Bollywood and Disney. Yeah, I mean, I was shocked. By the way, Hamza radiallahu anhu is also, there are so many stories that were written in Safavid Iran where Hamza radiallahu anhu is fighting Ajdaha, he's fighting monsters in those legendary tales. So you have Hamza radiallahu anhu and Ali radiallahu anhu, and they are basically in that pre-Islamic Persian mythological world, and they're engaging in that. So yeah, so it was very. I was shocked by the sort of things that I read. What was the Persian term for Lord of Conjunction? Sahib Kiran. Sahib Kiran. How were these claims influenced by ideas of 12 Shia idea of Imam? That's a very good question. So the Humayun is a very interesting figure, right? For him, the number 12 is really important. And if you had seen, he divides the hierarchy of basically the ranking of people under his domain into 12 categories, right? And so then I think it was his courtier or some guy in his court. He gave reasons for it, and he gave multiple, like long reasons for it. He says that, well, 12 is also the number of the Masum, the innocent Imam. 12 is also the number of some astrological something. Like he gave long, so 12 is very important. Um, and the as far as the idea of the Imam is concerned, that certainly plays a huge part in Shah Ismail's understanding of kingship, sovereignty, and likewise for Humayun. Loyal legitimacy by having Ali radiallahu anhu and Babur or Khan. Um, so if I understand this correctly, so yeah, I mean, this was a great tool to basically solidify your claim as you know a legitimate ruler, and by claiming that, people actually follow you. Just as people, just like people, like if there are votings, right? People just follow whatever the president or the prime minister has to say, or someone else. Like in the context of Pakistan, they're different, but yeah, I mean, you just have to follow that. I mean, the police will just have to follow whatever the guy who's sitting in the desk writes something and write, oh, there's a sign of my superior. That means I have to do it. So yeah, it's very similar to that. Just like it has these type of structures that have an effect on us, that had an effect on people. Babur had a huge problem in, having a loyal army. He had a huge, so a lot of the times he had to appeal to the Islamic sensibilities, right? So when he was fighting the Hindu king, I forgot his name, he had to destroy all the wine, like stories that he had, just to claim that, I've renounced all of that. I'm going to fight in the name of Islam. Um, so he had to do all of that. But Shah Ismail, no, Shah Ismail had crazy, crazy, followers. Shabani Khan, the guy that I mentioned, Shabani Khan, the Uzbek ruler who defeated Babur, Shabani Khan was later defeated by Shah Ismail. Okay. Shabani Khan did not claim anything. He did not claim any noble lineage or any of that. Just like Shira Suri. When Shah Ismail defeated him, he asked for his dead body to be brought in front of him, and then he got it. And then he asked his followers to eat it, to eat the body. And the disciples did it. And then he asks his disciples to trample the body, and they trample the body. So he had crazy, you know, devotees. In fact, in the Ismail Nama that I mentioned, right? In Ismail Nama, there's history as well. There's fiction, there's legendary tales, all of that. But one crucial aspect is missing from that story, and that is the defeat of Shah Ismail at the hands of Sultan Salim, the Ottoman Sultan, at the Battle of Chaldiran in 1514. That is missing. So while Shah Ismail was defeated in that battle, and he did not mention it, obviously, but Sultan Salim had to leave that place. Why? Because he was scared of Safavid propaganda. He was scared that his own followers would be enticed, would be some sort of they would just become his followers or something. So that was his aura. That was his, crazy, crazy power that he had. That he had to leave that place even though he won that battle. So Shah Ismail was crazy. He was a different level. Was Lord of Conjunction have anything to do with Mujtahid? No, I think the Mujtahid, I think it's, from what I understand in the Islamic tradition, it's like every 100 years there will be a reviver. Akbar claimed to be a Mujtahid, by the way, he claimed to be a Mujtahid, Lord of Conjunction, Sahib Kiran, and a couple of other things that Zille Ilahi, I think. Zille Ilahi, Noor-e Ilahi, these were the things as well. But I think the two are Lord of Conjunction is, I think, from what I understand from the book and what the author clearly says, it's entirely an astrological thing. It's just, you won't find anything that after 960 years, there's a conjunction of planets and that means something. I don't think that you'll find that. Timur and Genghis shared a common male line ancestor, which made them discern to legitimize rule formal lineage. Didn't Genghis Timur married? That is possible is primarily fiction. Yeah, they're fictional. Shahrukh. Subhanallah was very famous to see how much people criticize lineage and heritage, and these are still, yeah, they're relevant today as well. As charismatic Shasman was, there was scholarly concerns that his name was very good to show that he was very descendant Ali. Line of interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Akbar even comes out of this. Okay, I'm just gonna go through the questions. What were the critiques of ulama against these forms? There were many critiques actually. I mean, from what I read, Sheikh Ahmad Sirhindi, in the era of Shah Jahan, he does criticize Akbar severely for his claims. And he got into a lot of trouble for that. He was jailed and all that. So yeah, ulama did criticize him. Is the influence of ulama mentioned in detail in the book? If not, is there a good book which which is about the influence of ulama in this era? Um, so this book does talk about the influence of ulama, Sufia, generally speaking. Like I said, they basically become kingmakers, power brokers. But if you want to know like intellectual influence, then there are plenty of books that you can read. And I don't have any books in my mind right now, but there are books that are written by ulama of this era. It also depends on the region. Like if you're focusing on Maghrib, right, Maghrib, the Ottoman Empire, then I can mention some books. There is this book by Dr. Khalid al-Ruwayhib, Islamic intellectual history in the 16th and 17th century. That'll give you a good understanding of ulama and their intellectual. I like how you showed elections are very similar forms of symbol legitimation. However, when you claim that elections are secular and pre-modern modes of legitimate divine undermines the similarity. So what I meant by it was that so elections, right? That's a ritual. I mean, it's a rule of the game, but in other words, I see it as a ritual. It's a ritual. You have to that thing has to happen in order for a king or a ruler to emerge, right? Or a president. Um, so it's a ritual and it has meaning, right? It's a symbolic form. It has meaning as well. So any person who wins the election is basically he has the legitimate claim to authority and sovereignty. Um, so so we can change the word divine, but let's say sacred. And the reason that I use the word sacred is because um, there's always like a supernatural type of element involved in all of the uh, you know pre-modern um, sacred symbols of power, whether it's astrology, like there are some cosmic powers that are playing, that are at play. It's divine birth, it's lineage and all that. So Shah Ismail Mirror drinking like, yeah, this is the story, like is Fandiar's skull. You can Google Isfandiar, by the way. I don't know. I mean, I can show you right now. So yeah, he said he made that, but it gets worse. Like he asked his followers to eat the flesh of poor Shabani Khan. I liked how he defamiliarized election by saying it would have been very strange if people like, yet our Ulama today seem to be very comfortable with election. I also find it how today rulers. Yeah, I mean, the reason that, so we're basically products of modernity. Like we are people living in modernity. We are modern people. We are moderns. We just cannot escape that, right? We just have to live with it. Um, but look, the colonial era changed a lot of things. Like I'm hoping that I'll explain that point in the next session. Uh, Okay, how that, so everything that you saw, everything that you basically understood from this, wait what happens in the next session. Wait to see like the entire world just collapses, right? It just collapses. New ideas of sovereignty and authority emerges. I mean, the things that I mentioned, elections, party and votes and all that political party, those things become prevalent, right? So it was a radical change. Colonialism did a lot of you know, I guess colonialism was the Lord of Conjunction at the end of the day because it was so radical that it changed everything. Um, what seems to come through is how all different appropriate symbols rely on confluence with the imagination of its polity. So there are at some point seems to be seeking public legitimacy. Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, I also this is exactly what is happening. Um, so one section of the book talks about how the aura of Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu becomes so pervasive. Like Ali radiallahu anhu is his figure, his personality, and the stories about him, they're everywhere. Even European travelers or multiple sources who were working under Temur and then Shah Ismail, all of them are talking about one personality, one figure, Ali radiallahu anhu. That they're saying that they basically followed this one individual or one personality, and he's everywhere. He's like very brave. There are stories of him. People are writing poetry, they're writing fiction and all that. Um, and so Ali Radhan effectively becomes like popular sovereign. Like everyone believes that, Ali Radhan is like a source of legitimacy. So obviously if this is what the people think, then if I claim to be a descendant of Ali through a divine route, however ridiculous that may sound today, well, it works. I mean, it works. I'm claiming to be a descendant of Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu through a divine route, and that is, helping me. So yeah, I mean, the public perception. How did Persian culture endure so long till the time of Shah Ismail, even after Islamic conquest, the Abbasid? Yeah, I don't know that point. I think that I know that the Persians did have influence early on before that, but after the Mongol devastation of the Baghdad, the Arabic basically just dies out as a language of, you know, court. Like even Muqaffa or like all those guys, basically dies out. Clearly, throughout the time, many of these ideas are heretical, where any of Sufiya that successfully stood against the Brahmatic claims, ideas, beliefs, or Sharia. Yeah, I mean, ulama really, they actually stood against them. Um, like I said, Sheikh Sirhindi was jailed, and not just like the ulama, even like the siblings of, for example, Shah Jahan's brother, Khusro, he also stood up against him for his beliefs. So yeah, there was definitely contestation. I'm not sure the influence of Hinduism in this, but I'm also intrigued about the orthodox ideas of notional political legitimacy despite this. Yeah, how much of these claims legitimacy? Well, thank you so much for the lecture. Why, Jazakallah khair. Ali Radhanov invented chivalry. Will these questions in the chat also for the recordings? Inshallah. Right. Yes, Sheikh Qadri, you want to speak? I've asked you to unmute. Um, Sheikh,
No, sorry. Sorry, I didn't hear that very well. Thank you very much. So can I ask a question or add a few other commonalities? Because I know, Shirsha, you like to engage in a good debate and a good intellectual exchange as well.
Yeah, I'm okay with anything. Any comment, critique, question, anything.
All right. No, first of all, thank you very much. And I really also want to appreciate the organizers, Islamic Knowledge, I think Mufti Muad and everyone else. This is really wonderful. This is an area of interest. I'm not necessarily coming to, I mean, of course, I mean, I look forward to hearing different perspectives, but also to sometimes to share on some perspectives as well. A few very good things that you mentioned. I really appreciate. I think if we go back to the start at Babur's time, we remember that Shaybani Khan himself, although he did not necessarily claim a noble sacred lineage, but let's remember that he himself was from a higher patrilineal lineage from Genghis Khan himself. And to distinguish himself, Babur, who was from one of the younger brothers of Genghis Khan, he had to sort of invent a more noble lineage. So that was one of the other elements of it. And I think just out of curiosity information as well, remember that when Shaybani Khan defeated Babur for the first time, uh, Shaybani Khan even ran away with Babur's dear sister,
Yeah.
Khandada Begum, who was one of the most brightest political minds of her time, and she was one of the greatest advisors that Babur ever had. And it was Shah Ismail who was able to, once he destroyed Shaybani Khan, was able to rescue her. That's one thing I wanted to mention. The second thing I wanted to mention, which is sort of on the larger issue of what we're discussing today around the whole concept of sovereignty being something that is supported by the ulama. I think it's a fair point, and I really appreciated the work of Asfar Moin. It was a really good flashlight on several things. This is not alien to Islam. We also saw that in Europe and in Christianity. These movements come in. We also saw that happening even later. If you recall that the Sudanese, when they were fighting the British, they had to resort to the Mahdi of their own in the late 17th century. So this is a common concept that does come in. What I would certainly push back a little bit, I think you would probably also agree with me, is that you cannot apply this concept across time, across the Mughal Empire. And I just would like to quote two people who I think, if I remember correctly, when the book came out, wrote about it. Audrey Trushke herself said that this is not something that could be applied in all cases, because remember that as opposed to the Persians or the Ottomans, the Mughals were not ruling the subjects of the Mughals were not entirely Muslim. In fact, the vast majority were non-Muslims. So this legitimacy question was more for the elite, for them to be able to make sure that they do not deviate away from these paths, and not necessarily for the awam in that perspective. So I think Audrey was right about that. The other is Professor Irfan Habib, who made a very good critique of this from a very intellectual perspective. He said that yes, this was one of the ways for which to establish your reign, not necessarily continue that over a longer period of time, unless and until you come to Aurangzeb, when Aurangzeb had to heavily lean upon it to fight against Dara Shikoh. Because remember, Dara Shikoh was a Qadri Sufi, and Aurangzeb had to become a Naqshbandi and from a Chishtiya line, right? So that's a different debate. We'll come to that, I guess, when we'll talk about how Aurangzeb had to rely on the ulama and the Sufiya to fight off against Dara Shikoh. But the main point being that, and Irfan Habib, of course, being a Marxist historian, would say that it was the Mansabdari system. And I think one of the people were asking the question, how did Hinduism influence Mughal Empire? Which is essentially the Mansabdari system and the Rajputana system that the Mughals relied upon. The tax collection, the revenue systems, those basically gave them more legitimacy in the eyes of the larger public. They gave them more rights than the Hindu kingdoms that preceded the people at that time. So it was a mix of it. You had, for the elite, you needed to have sacred lineage establishment. For the awam, you had to be a little bit more egalitarian and an economic perspective. So those are the things. I think the only other thing I wanted to mention is the fact that, and only because Ibn Khaldun is one of my main subjects of what I'm writing right now. Ibn Khaldun was extremely clever, as you rightly pointed out, a very, very clever historian and a political architect. And himself rejected astrology as a science in its entirety. I mean, if you read the Muqaddimah, but he was using that as an argument when he was speaking to Timur. He was sent by the scholars of his time to speak to Timur to try to pacify him that you have done well enough. Don't you think you need to move other places, right? So it was more of a diplomatic encore mission. And remember, Ibn Khaldun was himself at 78, 79 years old by the time he met Timur. So a very clever guy. He was using these just as arguments, not necessarily that he himself was a very strong believer of the whole law of conjunction. And in fact, he disregarded much of astronomy when it comes to that. There are several other things, but I'll just restrict myself now, and I can give my own perspective and background onto some of these things, but we'll keep it for another time, Shersha. But wonderful work. I really appreciate what you've done. And thank you for giving me the time to speak a little bit about it. I'll keep sharing a few things, tidbits from here, and Jazakallah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this was really insightful. Yeah, please share the books that. So I know that Professor Audrey Drushki. I also have a book on Aurangzeb. I'm still here to read it, but this was really insightful. Yeah, that makes sense. I think that the part about the majority of the people that the Mughals ruled were non-Muslims, interesting. My reading on the Mughals is very scarce, but this was really insightful. Thank you so much for sharing. There's one book, I don't know if you've read it. I'll keep it short, but there's one book. It's called Imperial Identity in Mughal Empire: Memory and Dynastic Politics in Early Modern South and Central Asia. I'm not sure if you've read it, but that book basically argues that the Mughals were still presenting themselves as part of that elite Timurid Persianate culture, but also infusing various elements from the Chinggizid or Turkic culture and Persian Islamic culture. So I think that book was basically a response to some scholars who've argued that the Mughals basically became part of, or greatly influenced by Hindu, what should I say, Hinduism, themes of Hinduism, that, for lack of a better word. Again, I don't know a lot about Mughal Empire. The lecture was only on this book, Millennial Sovereign. But I just found that very fascinating. There's actually a debate going on as far as the influences is concerned. But I hope we get to talk more sometime, Brother Syed. Thank you. Yeah, I think there was another question. Uh, yes, Anas Shafi. I'm going to just give me a second. Okay, I'm asking you to unmute.
Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum. Can you share some light on like the Dini Akbariyat? Because Akbar will go so far to create his own interfaith religion. This concept is very interesting to me because now MBS is kind of pushing the Ibrahimic religions and the UAE is running, and how fascinating the Arab war is trying to undermine Islam from that perspective. And many scholar, we don't call them scholar for dollar, but how they were influenced by the print. I forgot the name. These people, they believe all the religions are ones, right? The Prentice, every time somebody tried to go in protests and like they're trying to basically politically activated, but these things are kind of like, it has a lots of connection, especially for us, like this generation. I'm 23 this year. It's very fascinating about how Akbar will go so far to create his own religions just to have a political legitimacy.
Yeah, so I can share some details about Din Ilahi, as it was called. So Din Ilahi was basically it was, you can say that it was like a disciple. So he had his own disciples, right? And the Din Ilahi was what it was called. He was severely criticized for it. And like I said, the response that he gave was that, how can I be against Islam when I don't even ask the Sayyids to prostrate before me? So what that means is like all the red lines are already crossed because people are literally bowing prostrating before him. And his response in his defense is that, well, I don't ask the Sayyids to do it. But yeah, I mean, but so when I read the book, for me, Akbar was not. I already knew, like in school, I was told that Majid al-Afsani, Sheikh Hamad al-Hindi rose up and then he criticized him. Was already aware of that. And there's also this figure, I guess Brother Moss can talk about this more. Akbar is presented as a secular type of guy who was okay with everyone. But now after reading this book and this is something that Dr. Moin also talks about. He said, well, he wasn't a secular. He's deeply entrenched in this, prevalent ideas of kingship and sovereignty, and nothing about this is secular at all. Uh, but I was not shocked. Like after reading the book, I wasn't shocked at the sort of things that Akbar, like as you've said, the limits to which he went for like creating a new religion. I wasn't shocked after I read about Shah Ismail and what he did, or what Shah Jahan did and with his paintings. No, sorry, Jahangir. Shah Jahan did something very interesting. He, in order to challenge his father for the throne, and to get support from Ulama and Sufia, he basically had a beard. So Jahangir did not have a beard. He had a mustache, right? So Shah Jahan, he grows a beard just to, present himself as, a more rightful heir to the throne. So yeah, so I wasn't shocked. As far as the Abrahamic Accord is concerned, I don't know what to say about that. I have no idea what is going on in that side of the world. So any thoughts, any critiques, any questions? By the way, Doctor, I invited Dr. Moin actually to this session, but he was busy. He did ask about it, and then we had an exchange through emails. He was very happy with this, but he just could not join. So I hope to invite maybe like another scholar, like a fourth one, but that's up to you. Like if you want, if there's a book, I'll give you options. Like there are scholars that I'm in contact with, and if you want to talk to the author, I can invite him there. I'm actually on good terms with them, and we usually have conversations. I ask them questions, and we have conversations, so that can happen. So any other questions, critiques, comments, anything that you want to share? Yeah, how did the Sufis become so influential with the rulers when they were mainly working with the masses? Yeah, we don't know how, like, but it just happened. We know that they were active with the masses, as you mentioned, but they were also kingmakers and power brokers. They were very influential. In fact, there's this book that I want to show you. Just give me a second. So this book, um, this one. By the way, this author, Dr. Walid Ziad, will also join us for a session. So, Hidden Caliphate, okay, by Dr. Walid Ziad. It's about the Mujaddidi Sufi scholarly network of Fazl Ahmad Peshawari, right? So, Sheikh Ahmad Hindi, he's uh, the the scholar who starts the Mujaddidi network. Uh, this book is about the particular, like the scholarly network that Fazl Ahmad Peshawari or Hazrat Jio Sahib started. Right. So basically, his influence was from Peshawar to Bukhara to Herat to Kabul, and like very vast, the tribal areas in Pakistan. He was very influential in that. Um, so this book, so this is like 19th century, and the Fazl Ahmad Peshawari is so powerful that the king of Bukhara is his disciple. So it starts in post-Mongolic era, where the Sufis are now becoming dominant. Why or how? We don't know, but it just happens. There are different theories, and I'm not sure what the theories are, but like it just happens. But the point is, it happens, and then it goes on till like the 19th century, right? So yeah. You may ask the PDFs. Yeah, I mean, I've shared I've created a Google doc where all of those PDFs are mentioned, basically shared. There are a few texts that I also have to upload there, but I guess you have the link. I think I shared that with Shay. So, by the way, somebody asked about a political system or something. Again, like I want to mention this again. I don't agree with every single thing, even in this book, Millennial Sovereign or like Hidden Caliphate, anything. I don't agree with all of it. There are things that I like, and there are obviously things that I disagree with. But this book, uh, Political Theology, Political Theology in Islam by Paul Heck, this is a good book about like from the Umayyad Empire till the modern state, the different political systems in Islam. So I think this is a good overview. Again, there are good critiques of this book as well. But the whole idea of reading this material is just to allow the mind to like engage different ideas, to see, to understand things better. So if you're interested in political systems, this Lord of Conjunction thing, or like what was happening in the time of the Abbasid and the Seljuks. Like Abbasid were basically symbolic kings, right? Symbolic. They only had symbolic authority, caliphs, and the effective authority was with the Seljuks. Okay. And this happens in like 10th century, 11th century. But so even when Seljuks started a civil war and they were fighting against one another, the Seljuks, the two factions had puppet Abbasid caliphs, both of them. And they wanted their Abbasid puppet to sit on a throne. Okay? Because again, it's all rules of the game, right? This is the book, Political Theology in Islam by Paul Hegg. Is the Lord of Conjunction a bit like being an anointed king in Europe? I don't know. Because I don't know much about the monarch in Europe. So I don't know how to compare the two. I think I mentioned this book earlier as well, but if you want to talk about, understand like the categories, I'm sure Said Qadri has read this book as well. The categories of India, Iran, Hindustan, all that. This book will help you a lot. The Loss of Hindustan, the Invention of India. So it's about how the Mughal Empire was basically Hindustan. That was the political geography. And India is the invention of colonial historiography. So I found that book very interesting. Yes, Hussein.
Yes, I think we did discuss about it in the Telegram group before. Let's remember the fact that Muslims have been in India for a long, long time, right? You have to remember that from the in fact, forget late 750s. Muslims have been trading with India through the ports of Kerala from 680 onwards, essentially, right? So we're talking about the earliest of generations of Islam. Now, they have recorded a lot of history, especially during the Abbasid era, and they would refer it to Hindustan as a larger concept. And Hindustan was essentially understood as, during post Alexander's time, anything the other side of the Indus River onwards. So that entire contiguous landmass, which historically speaking, only two empires or emperors had held at any given point of time. From my reading of it, it's either the Buddhist emperor Ashoka or the Mughal emperor Aurangzeb. So as a concept, Hindustan is a powerful concept. It encompasses India, Pakistan, modern day Bangladesh, to some extent, some early parts of Sri Lanka, because you do have Muslims occupying certain areas as well. So it is a concept, it's an idea. I don't think we should look at it as a contiguous nation state and try to derive anachronistically what we think of nation states today. So I think just as a shorthand, Hindustan is fine. But let's remember that there were several Muslim kingdoms even at the time of Mughals. You had the Bahmani kingdom in the south. You had the what you call the ones that actually, in fact, the south is a very interesting. I have several books from Ubaidur Rahman, Forgotten Muslim Empires of South of India, and the Mughals and Sufis from Muzaffar Alam and Ubaidur Rahman. They'll go into more details about how we get besotted by this whole concept of north of India, which is essentially Delhi and a few other parts. But the bulk of the masses came from Bangladesh and the south, and it's a fascinating period of our history. Essentially, I mean, those of you who have an interest in South Asia. So yeah, there are several things, and I think, and yeah, one of the commentators is right. The first mosque of India is in Kerala. In fact, if you even look at it from a fiqhi perspective, you would find nuances there, right? Most of the south of India are essentially Shafi'i, and they follow also a different version of Qadri Sufi tariqas over there. The north is completely different. My own family came from the Punjab regions, right? From Multan onwards and elsewhere. So you have a lot of diversity even amongst the Muslims and where they occupied themselves. It's a subject for another day, but I thought I'll just chime in with a few points. But thank you.
Yeah, thank you. But kindly share the books that you mentioned as well in the Telegram group. I will have to, at some point, I will have to buy a book haul on India. I have read Dr. Eden. So what you mentioned about the people who the Bengal and those regions. So I think that his book, Islam and the Rise of Islam in the Bengal Frontiers, and the thesis is that these regions, it's very weird that the political force of Islam was active in North India for such a long time, but we don't see a lot of conversion. We see conversion on the fringes, on the peripheries. But my reading on India is still, I think it's not that much, so I'll have to start with Order Trushki and others as well. So kindly share, especially in South India. I think yeah, it's like not on people's radar, unfortunately. There are communities in South Indonesian which trace lineage with Arab traders. Thai being one of them, right? Interesting. Oh yeah, I almost forgot one thing to share. Okay, so I'm really bad with slides, okay? I'm not creative at all. I don't understand the templates and all, so I'm just very boomer, like you don't understand anything. My younger brother used to do it for me like last year, but he's now busy with university. So either I can share a lot of texts, quotes, right, or screenshots of the book, or I can just share like bullet points and paintings. If you like this type of lecture, then it's fine, but I can also like change it. I can add more quotations, more images, any of that, right? But this is how I normally like when I'm creating a slide or like a presentation, this is how I'm doing it. It's very, very low tech. It's not very creative. Uh, so yeah, so do share any ideas. Next session is about sovereignty in colonial India. So two books we're discussing: Defending Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in Modernity and Perilous Intimacies, both by Dr. Turi. So we'll have a session on that. We'll understand the colonial era. We'll understand the social world, the way that we describe the social world here. We'll describe the world there, the changes that happened, and how is the world, and how we'll understand like the background, the historical background of Deoband, Bareilly, Aligarh, and all these schools. Farangi Mahal, Khairabad. We'll understand the colonial background. So, yeah, right. Okay, Wayak, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this session. And again, like I really enjoy critiques and disagreements. Okay, I really enjoy them. So if there's any disagreement on the book or anything that I said that you disagree with, just share it. Okay, I really enjoy it. I really like these kind of discussions. So it's my hobby. So thank you everyone. Thank you for the kind comments.